Clive Staple Lewis said this: suppose there was no intelligence behind the universe. In that case, my brain was not designed for the purpose of thinking. Thought is merely the byproduct of atoms in my skull. But if so, how can I trust my own thinking to be true? I love that quote from C.S. Lewis because it reveals a very interesting conundrum that befalls the atheist. If there is no God, then our brains are merely the result of an unguided evolutionary process, which begs the question, by what standard do we trust our own thoughts? And that's the topic of today's video. In this video, Frank Turek debates an atheist on the purpose of reason and if reason actually exists in an atheistic universe. And although this atheist tried to defend his position that we don't need a God, he was humbly dismantled by Frank Turek's argument. I want you to watch this video and I'm going to give my thoughts as we go.
Why couldn't we trust their minds if they're just made of matter?
Well, because if physics drive everything and there's no immaterial realm, if we're mind, then how can physics drive conclusions that are true? They might drive conclusions that lead to survival, but not true. Like right now, we're having a conversation, right?
Yes.
What physical laws are creating your response to me and my response to you?
I guess all of the atoms and particles and all the laws of nature just wrapped up together in a ultra complex way.
Well, yeah, but how do they come up with these unique questions? We're having a conversation here. Are we saying that different chemicals come into existence when I say pink elephant, and different chemicals come up in your mind when you say white rhinoceros?
Yeah.
And that would be more of a miracle than saying we just have minds.
Would it?
Yeah.
Because it's like I guess think of like a computer.
Uh-huh.
Like we have like the screen of our eyes basically. But like you can't just like break open a computer and see, oh, look, there's the pink elephant that's stored in there.
That's right.
You can go onto the computer, type pink elephant, and there's the pink elephant.
Right, but this computer's designed. And that's why we can trust it. If a computer was not designed, would you trust it?
I mean, I guess I'm having a hard time thinking of what that would even look like.
That's right. That's my point. That's Lewis's point.
Yeah.
Why we can trust our minds, we know that. That's the effect. The question is what caused that?
I guess evolution.
But even if evolution were true, what laws that are driving evolution, where do they come from?
I guess I don't know.
Yeah, see, that's what Lewis is saying here. That when you get back to it, if the thoughts that you have are merely the byproducts of some atoms within my skull, then you should have no reason to trust those thoughts. But you can trust your thoughts, so you ought not reason back to an undesigned mind. You ought to reason back to a designed mind.
You know, I love how this moment happened. It happened organically. This kid genuinely thought what he said made sense, not even realizing he's presupposing design to make sense of what he said. If our minds are truly the result of evolutionary processes, they're just atoms, our thoughts are just atoms colliding, then by what standard do we trust our thoughts? I mean, listen, we trust our cell phones to function properly because we know they were designed. I trust this camera to function properly because I know it was designed. Therefore, I reason back to a designer. It's intellectually dishonest to therefore look at the human body, a cell, which is way more complex than a camera, and not reason back to a designer. What so many atheists fail to understand is when they say things like, we don't have enough evidence for God, or we don't need God to have science, morality, logic. When they say things like that, they're using their brain that they believe is a result of random processes. Why are you even trusting those thoughts to be true? By what standard are they true? Can't say yourself. That would make truth subjective, and to say all truth is subjective is an absolute truth. So truth is not subjective. You can't say, well, I know that to be true because nature, reality. Well, you're using your senses to assess reality, to make sure it's functioning properly. Well, how do you know your senses are functioning properly? Well, reality is telling me they're functioning properly. It's circular reasoning. So you can't trust reality or your senses without circular reasoning. You can't trust your mind because it's a result of atoms colliding. How do you know anything you're saying is true?
Got him! In fact, here's what John Lennox asked some scientist friends of his who are atheists. He says, how do you do science? And they say, oh, I got this machine. And he goes, no, I'm not talking about a machine in your office or your lab. How do you do science up here? And they say, you mean with mind? They start to say mind, and they catch themselves and say brain. And they say brain, and he says, yeah, with your brain. What's the history of your brain? How did your brain get here? And they say, oh, my brain is the product of random forces that didn't have its end in mind. And then Lennox says, and you trust it? Oh. Yeah, well, why would you trust such a thing? Why would you trust a computer if such a computer could come into existence out of nothing if it wasn't designed?
It hasn't let me down before. Or it has, but not.
Right, because you already have the effect, but you need to reason back to the cause. Right? Your mind is an effect. So what caused your mind is the question.
And this is the question no one can answer. What caused it? What caused the universe to come into existence? Nothing. Nothing is nothing. Yes, intelligent life exists, but what caused it? DNA. There's a code. There's specified information in the DNA molecule. What caused it? You see, many atheists will say, we don't know what caused life to come into existence, but we know it wasn't God. Well, if your brain, again, is the result of random mutations, matter colliding with matter, why are you even trusting that thought to be true? You see, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. The reality is both atheists and Christians believe in miracles. Atheists believe the miracle that nothing created everything. Christians believe in the miracle that something created everything. Now, which one is more rational? That nothing created all the things we see, or that God created all the things we see?
See, physics does the same thing over and over again. Where does the genetic code come from? This is a software program, right? Programs come from programmers. In all our experience, that's where it comes from. So that's where we have an effect, this software program. The question is, what caused it? Why would we say natural laws which do the same thing over and over again, which can't produce this specified complexity we see in a code?
Is every star the same?
No, every star is not the same, but stars aren't specified and complex. Specified complexity is like a program, like a pattern, like this is specified complexity. You would never see this. Let me just give you a simple example. If you're walking along the beach and you see John loves Mary in the sand, you don't think the waves made that. You don't think crabs came out of the water and made that message, right? You say that message requires a mind. Well, if that message, John loves Mary, requires a mind, then what happens if you find a message 3.5 billion letters long? That's got to require a mind too. That's what we're saying.
Yeah. But to that, I would say you could see like a skull in the rocks and say, oh, that's a message of an omen of death or whatever. And even though it was just the waves washing up on the shore that created this.
Yeah, we're not saying you can't find things that look odd in nature that, oh, that looks like it could be Grandfather Mountain. Looks like the way that stone comes out. Looks like it's his nose. Okay, but that's not what we're talking about here.
But here's the real problem. This is not a head issue. This is a heart issue. Atheists don't want God to be true. At least most of them don't. It's not that they don't have enough evidence. The evidence is all around us. They don't want God to be true because their deeds are evil and they don't want to be held accountable. Psalms 14:1 says, only fools say in their hearts, there is no God. They are corrupt and their actions are evil. Not one of them does good. Their minds are full of darkness. They wander far from the life of God because they have closed their minds and hardened their hearts against Him. They have no sense of shame. They live for lustful pleasure and eagerly practice every kind of impurity. So as believers, it's our responsibility to not play the game, not provide tons and tons of of evidence when it's just clear. It could be seen for themselves and it can be searched for themselves, but they won't do that. Our job is to be patient, long-suffering, give them the gospel, let them know that despite their sin, Jesus paid the penalty for that sin. And if they place their faith in Jesus, not themselves, not science, not anything else, in Jesus, he will forgive them of their sin. If they turn from their sin and turn to Jesus, he will give them eternal life. We have to understand that there is no neutral ground. There is no demilitarized zone. You're either for Christ or you're against him. Really ask yourself, why are you doubting God so much? Once again, Frank Turek did an amazing job of politely and graciously addressing this issue and allowing this young, humble student to just ponder a little bit the reality of his position, and perhaps his position is flawed. If you enjoyed this video and you want more content like this, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. Like this video. I'll be back next week with another one. This is Pastor Frederick. This is By the Book. Peace.